The coffee pot trembled in my hands again. I pressed my lips together, willing my fingers to steady as I poured table 4. 2 a.m. on a Thursday, and Rosie's diner hummed with its usual cast of insomniacs and people with nowhere else to go. I understood that last category intimately. The shaking had started 6 months ago, right after Jake's release from jail. The doctors called it anxiety. I called it my body's refusal to forget what fear tasted like. Table 9 needs a refill. Rosie's voice cut through my thoughts. I grabbed the pot and headed toward the corner booth where he sat. Table 9. Always table 9. For 3 weeks now, he'd been here every night I worked graveyard shift. Same time? 2 a.m. exactly. Same order black coffee he barely touched. Same unsettling habit, watching me like I was something worth seeing. He sat perfectly still in expensive black clothes that didn't belong in a place like this. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes the color of smoke. Everything about him screamed money and danger. Coffee? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Please. That accent Italian silk wrapped around English. I poured, hyper-aware of his gaze tracking my movements. When I finished, our eyes met briefly. How long have your hands been shaking like that? The question stunned me. In 3 weeks, he'd never spoken beyond pleasantries. Now his voice wrapped around my secret, gentle but unyielding. The diner door exploded inward. Jake stumbled inside, his jacket soaked, eyes wild and red-rimmed. My entire body went rigid. Emma! Wrong name. He was drunk enough to forget I'd changed it. We need to talk. Jake, you need to leave. Rosie reached for the phone. You know you can't be here, just talk, that's all. He lurched toward me. Baby, please, it's Lily. And you have a restraining order. I backed up until the counter pressed against my spine. Go. Now. He closed the distance in 3 unsteady steps, reaching for my wrist. The man from table 9 moved. One moment he was sitting in shadows, the next he was there, between me and Jake, his presence suddenly filling the entire diner. The casual stillness had transformed into something that made every instinct scream danger. Remove your hand, he said quietly. Now. Just 4 words. Conversational tone. But underneath ran a current of controlled violence, more terrifying than any shout. Who the hell are you? Jake's bravado cracked. The stranger smiled without warmth. His hand moved too fast to track, and suddenly Jake was gasping, bent forward, his wrist caught in some kind of hold. Someone who believes men should respect restraining orders. His tone stayed pleasant. You're going to walk out of here now and never come near her again. Understand? Yes. Please. He released Jake, who stumbled backward. Before he could escape, 2 men in dark suits entered the diner, flanking the entrance like they'd materialized from nowhere. Gentlemen, please escort this man to his vehicle and ensure he understands the consequences of trespassing. They moved with professional efficiency, guiding Jake outside. Through the window, I watched them speak to him. Jake's face went white, and he sped away moments later. Then it was just me and the stranger standing too close while everyone stared. Are you hurt? His voice had gentled. I shook my head. He produced a business card heavy stock, silver lettering, Alessandro Vitali, and a phone number. He'll come back, Alessandro said, pressing it into my trembling hand. When he does, you call me, day or night. Promise me. I don't even know you. Those smoke-gray eyes held mine with devastating intensity. No, but I've been watching you for 3 weeks, and I know enough. He stepped back, creating distance. Call me when you need me, Lily, and you will need me. He walked out into the rain, his men following like shadows. I stood there with his card burning in my palm, while Rosie stared at me like I'd just made a deal with the devil. Girl, Rosie said slowly, do you know who that was? I shook my head. That's Alessandro Vitali. His family doesn't just own restaurants in the city, they own the city. Her expression turned grave. And he just claimed you in front of witnesses. My hands were shaking worse than ever. But for the first time in 6 months, it wasn't entirely from fear. I didn't sleep when I got home at 6 a.m. Instead, I sat on my worn couch. Alessandro's business card on the coffee table, staring at the embossed silver letters until they blurred. My phone buzzed Rosie, checking if I was okay. I typed back a lie about being fine and turned off my phone. The card felt dangerous. Like it meant accepting everything it represented, protection with strings attached, safety that came with a price I couldn't afford to pay. But when I finally crawled into bed as dawn broke over Brooklyn, I tucked it under my pillow, just in case. The next morning, my landlord knocked on my door. "Morning, Lily. Got a work order here to fix your locks." He held up a clipboard, looking confused. "Says it's priority. Paid in advance." I hadn't requested any repairs. The broken lock on my door had been on my someday when I have money list for 8 months. "Who paid for it?" He shrugged. "Anonymous benefactor, apparently." "Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, kid. These are good locks too. The expensive kind." By noon I had a deadbolt that actually worked and a chain lock that could stop a battering ram. The locksmith left a card. "Vitali Security Services." My hand started shaking again. 2 days later, my car, which had been making ominous grinding sounds for a month, was suddenly fixed. "Some guy came by the shop yesterday," the mechanic told me, wiping grease from his hands. "Said to do a full service on your Honda. Transmission, brakes, the works, left cash. Lots of it." "What guy?" "Didn't give a name. Just said you were under protection now, whatever that means." "Real polite, but double quotes," he trailed off, eyes shifting nervously. "Look, I don't ask questions. Your car's safe to drive. That's what matters." I sat in my newly repaired Honda, hands gripping the steering wheel, and pulled out Alessandro's card. My thumb hovered over my phone's dial button. "He's buying your compliance," I told myself. This is control disguised as care. But when I started the engine, and it purred perfectly for the first time in years, all I felt was confused gratitude. At the diner that night, a man in a dark suit sat 3 tables away from my section. He didn't order much, just coffee and pie he didn't touch. But his eyes constantly scanned the entrance, the windows, the other customers. When a drunk regular got too loud near me, the man stood slightly. Just a shift in posture, but the drunk suddenly decided to leave. "You've got a guardian angel," Rosie muttered during my break. "Or a very expensive shadow." "Alessandro Vitali doesn't do things halfway, Lily. Once he decides someone matters. ... 4 quotes. She left the sentence unfinished. "I didn't ask for this." "Doesn't matter. You've got it anyway." She squeezed my shoulder. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I didn't have an answer. On the 4th night, Alessandro returned. He walked in at 2 a.m. exactly, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent. The security guard 3 tables away relaxed visibly. The entire diner seemed to exhale. He didn't sit at table 9. Instead, he approached the counter where I was refilling napkin dispensers, and the proximity made my pulse spike. "Lily." My name in his mouth sounded different, careful, like something valuable. "I need to talk to you." "When your shift ends." It wasn't quite a question, but his tone left room for refusal. I should have said no, should have thanked him for the locks in the car and asked him politely to stop, should have recognized that men who fix your problems without asking always want something in return. Instead, I heard myself say, "I'm off at 6. Something flickered in those smoke-gray eyes. Relief? Satisfaction? I'll wait. He moved to table 9, ordered his usual black coffee, and watched me work for the next 4 hours. But this time, the weight of his gaze felt different. Less like observation, more like anticipation. When my shift ended and I walked toward his table, apron clutched in nervous hands, Alessandro stood with the grace of someone who'd never doubted I'd come. "There's a Arthur Hour Cafe 2 blocks away. Neutral ground." His slight smile acknowledged the absurdity. "We'll talk there. No pressure. No obligations. Just ... conversation." "About what?" His expression turned serious. "About why your ex-boyfriend is about to become a very distant memory. And about what kind of man is offering you protection." My breath caught. "You did something to Jake." "I did what was necessary." no apology in his voice. And you deserve to know what that means before deciding if you want to keep my card or throw it away. He offered his hand. I stared at it, strong, calloused, steady, and made a choice that would change everything. I took it. The cafe was empty except for a bored barista and us. Alessandro ordered 2 cappuccinos without asking what I wanted, but somehow knew I preferred them sweet. When they arrived, he pushed one toward me and wrapped his hands around his own cup like he needed the warmth. I'm not a good man, Lily. He started without preamble. My family controls half the docks in Brooklyn, most imports through Red Hook, and enough legitimate businesses to make the illegal ones nearly invisible. My throat went dry. Hearing it confirmed was different than suspecting. You're mafia. My family prefers businessmen with flexible ethics. His smile was wry, but yes. The Vitali family has run operations in New York for 3 generations. I inherited leadership when my father died 5 years ago. I should have stood up, walked away, but his honesty kept me frozen. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what kind of protection you're accepting. He met my eyes steadily. And because I won't lie to you, not now, not ever, I took a shaky sip of cappuccino. Perfect sweetness. What did you do to Jake? I bought his debts. All of them. Alessandro's expression hardened. Your ex-boyfriend owes money to some very dangerous people who suggested he could work off those debts by bringing them something valuable. You. The cappuccino turned to acid in my stomach. What? Trafficking. The word landed like a physical blow. Jake's been building gambling debts for 2 years. The Kozlov brothers don't forgive debt, but they do accept alternative payment. He was planning to deliver you to them within the week. I couldn't breathe. The cafe walls felt like they were closing in. How do you know this? Because I make it my business to know everything in my territory. His hand covered mine on the table, warm, steady, grounding. And because 3 weeks ago, I walked into a diner and saw you pour coffee with shaking hands, and I haven't been able to look away since. You've been watching me for 3 weeks because of Jake? No. His thumb traced my knuckles. I've been watching you because the moment I saw you smile at customers who didn't see you. Survive with grace, despite exhaustion written in every line of your body, I knew you were someone worth protecting. The Jake situation just gave me a reason to act faster. My mind spun. So now he owes you instead? Now his debts are forgiven. In exchange, he signed documents promising to never contact you, never enter Brooklyn, never speak your name. Alessandro's voice dropped colder. If he violates any condition, he understands exactly what will happen to him. And Lily, he waited until I met his eyes. He believes me in a way he never believed that restraining order. Why would you do this? You don't know me. I know you worked 2 jobs to survive. I know you changed your name to escape your past. I know you take medication for anxiety you can barely afford. His gaze held mine with devastating intensity. I know you deserve better than being invisible, and I want to give you space to breathe. Space to breathe, I repeated slowly. What does that mean? Alessandro pulled out a key, sliding it across the table. I own a building in Park Slope. Secure, good neighborhood. There's a furnished 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor. Yours if you want it. No rent, just safety. I can't accept you can. Not aggressive, just certain. I'm also offering you a legitimate job managing books for my restaurants if you want to quit the diner. Good pay, normal hours. Or keep both jobs. Or neither. Your choice entirely. Nothing is free, I whispered. What do you want from me? His smile was sad. I want you to sleep without fear. I want your hands to stop shaking. I want you to remember what it feels like to be seen as something precious instead of invisible. He leaned forward slightly. And I want the chance to know you really know you without the shadow of Jake hanging over your life. This is insane. Completely. He didn't deny it. But I'm a patient man, Lily. Take the apartment. Take the job or don't. No expectations beyond letting me make sure you're safe. And if you decide you want nothing to do with me after that, he spread his hands, you keep it all anyway. No strings. I stared at the key on the table between us. silver and simple and representing everything terrifying and tempting. Why me? Alessandro's expression softened into something almost vulnerable. Because I've spent 5 years being the boss, the decision-maker, the man everyone fears, and then I saw you surviving, not thriving, but still choosing kindness. And I remembered what it felt like to want something for myself. Not for the family, not for business, just ... for me. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his jaw tightened. I need to handle something. But, Lily, he stood, leaving the key on the table. Think about it. The offer stands regardless of your answer to anything else. He walked out into the dawn, leaving me with a cappuccino, a key, and a choice that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Jump into the unknown or stay in the familiar fear I'd learned to survive. My hand closed around the key. I moved in 3 days later. The apartment was on a tree-lined street in Park Slope that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Brick buildings with flower boxes, cafes on corners, people walking dogs that probably cost more than my old rent. Alessandro's building had a doorman who greeted me by name, Miss Martinez, and escorted me to the 3rd floor like I was someone important. The apartment took my breath away. Hardwood floors caught afternoon sunlight streaming through windows overlooking the street. A kitchen with appliances that actually worked. A bedroom with a real bed, queen-sized with soft grey bedding, not the futon I'd been sleeping on for 2 years. Everything decorated in warm neutrals that felt expensive but not cold. And on the kitchen counter, groceries. Fresh vegetables, pasta, bread still warm. It's barely enough. He shook his head. You deserve more than acceptable, Lily. You deserve extraordinary. I gestured helplessly at the apartment. I can't pay you back for this. I'm not asking you to. He stepped inside and the space suddenly felt smaller, charged. I told you no strings. This is yours, whether you want anything to do with me or not. Why don't I believe that? His smile was slight. Because you've learned that men always want something. And you're right to be cautious. He moved to the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the street. But I meant what I said. The only thing I want is to know you're safe. Everything else, he turned to face me, is your choice. We stood in silence, the evening light painting him in gold and shadow. Have dinner with me, Alessandro said quietly. Not as payment, not as obligation, just let me take you somewhere nice. Let someone treat you well for one evening. I should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries. But looking at him, this dangerous man who'd somehow learned. I was vegetarian and made sure I had fresh bread. I found myself nodding. Okay. His smile transformed his face into something breathtaking. He took me to a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy that didn't have a sign. Are you a vegetarian? Just a discreet door where the owner greeted Alessandro with a embrace and rapid Italian. I felt seen. We sat at a corner table with candles and wine I couldn't pronounce. Everything acceptable? Even though he owned the building. Is everything acceptable? He stayed in the doorway, clearly giving me Alessandro space. Ordered for both of us, checking each choice. It stayed in the doorway. Do you like mushrooms, truffle oil? It stayed in the doorway. Too much garlic. The food clearly was art. The wine was giving perfect. Me space. And Alessandro was unexpectedly easy to talk to. He asked about my childhood in foster care, listening with complete attention when I described bouncing between homes. He told me about his Sicilian mother who'd taught him honor before she died when he was 17. We talked about books, about Brooklyn, about the strange loneliness of surviving in a city of millions. You said you watched me for 3 weeks before speaking, I said over tiramisu. Why wait so long? Alessandro's expression turned serious. Because I needed to be sure. Sure of what? That what I felt wasn't just ... attraction, or pity, or some savior complex. He leaned forward slightly. I needed to be sure that when I stepped into your life, it would be for the right reasons. That I could offer protection without possession, care without control. And you're sure now? I'm sure I've been in love with you since I watched you pour coffee with shaking hands and still smile at people who didn't deserve your kindness. His voice was raw with honesty. I'm sure that's insane. Sure that's insane. that it's too fast. That you have every reason not to trust me. My heart hammered against my ribs. Alessandro? But I'm also sure, he continued, smoke-grey eyes holding mine with devastating intensity, that if you give me a chance, just a chance, I'll spend every day proving I'm worth that trust. The restaurant fell away. The other diners, the candles, the soft music, all of it narrowed to just him. This man who'd bought my ex's debts, given me an apartment, learned my dietary preferences, and was now offering his heart with the same careful certainty he'd used to dismantle my fears. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. How to accept help. How to trust someone who could hurt me so easily. Then let me teach you. He reached across the table, his hand open, offering, one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations, just ... Let me show you what it's like to be cherished instead of controlled. I looked at his hand, steady, strong, patient, and slowly I placed mine in his. His fingers closed around mine with infinite gentleness, and his smile was worth every risk I was taking. Thank you, Alessandro said softly, for giving me a chance. Outside the restaurant window, Brooklyn glittered with possibility, and for the first time in years I let myself believe in something beyond survival. I let myself believe in hope. The first week in Alessandro's apartment felt like living someone else's life. I woke to sunlight instead of sirens, made coffee in a kitchen where everything worked, walked to the diner I'd kept my job, needing the independence, with the security detail trailing 2 blocks behind. Marcus, Alessandro's head of security, introduced himself the second morning with coffee and a gentle smile. Just making sure you're safe. Miss Martinez. Alessandro came by every evening at 7, never staying long, never crossing boundaries. We'd sit on my couch in my apartment that still felt surreal, and talk for an hour. About everything, about nothing. He told me about running his family's empire, the weight of decisions that affected hundreds of people. I told him about wanting to finish my degree someday, about dreams I'd packed away when survival became the only goal. You'll finish, Alessandro said on the 4th night, his certainty absolute. I'll make sure of it. You can't just fix everything with money. No, his smile was slight. But I can remove obstacles so you have the space to fix things yourself. There's a difference. The attraction between us was undeniable. Every accidental touch lingered. Every time his eyes traced my face, I felt heat bloom in my chest. But Alessandro maintained careful distance, as if I was something fragile he was afraid to break. Why won't you touch me? I asked on the 5th night, wine loosening my usual caution. His jaw tightened. Because you've been hurt enough. I won't be another man who takes before you're ready to give. What if I'm ready? You're not. Gentle, but firm. You're still learning to trust me. And that's okay. I'm patient, Lily. I can wait until you're sure. On the 7th night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I should have ignored it. Instead, I answered, and Jake's voice poured through like poison. Emma, baby, please. You have to help me. They're going to kill me. Your boyfriend, whoever he is, he's got people watching me, threatening me. Just tell him to back off, please. My hand started shaking again. Alessandro, sitting beside me, noticed immediately. His expression shifted from gentle to glacial in a heartbeat. He held out his hand. Give me the phone. I should have refused. Should have handled Jake myself. But the trembling in my fingers made the decision for me. Alessandro took the phone, and his entire demeanor transformed into something cold and lethal. He spoke in rapid Italian tones, so arctic I felt the temperature drop. Whatever he said made Jake's pleading turn to terrified silence. Alessandro's eyes never left mine, even as he delivered what sounded like absolute destruction in a language I didn't understand. When he hung up, he cupped my face with both hands, the first real touch beyond casual contact, and it burned. You'll never hear from him again, Alessandro promised, his thumb brushing my cheek. I swear it. What did you say to him? That if he contacts you again, if he even thinks your name, he'll discover exactly how creative my family can be when properly motivated. His voice was soft, deadly. But the restraining order was mercy. This is the final warning. I should have been frightened. Should have seen this as proof that Alessandro was dangerous, violent, everything I should avoid. Instead, I leaned into his touch and felt safer than I had in years. Lily. My name was almost a groan. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you trust me. Like you want. He stopped himself, pulling back slightly. I promised myself I'd give you time. Maybe I don't want time anymore. The words left my mouth before courage could fail. His pupils dilated. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I was trembling again, but not from fear. I know you're dangerous. I know this is fast. I know every logical reason I should keep my distance. I met his smoke-grey eyes. But I also know you've spent a week learning how I take my coffee, making sure I feel safe, respecting boundaries even when I can feel how much you want to cross them. Alessandro's control was fracturing. I could see it in the tension of his jaw, the way his hands flexed against my face. I'm falling in love with you, I whispered. And that terrifies me more than anything Jake ever did. He kissed me. Not gentle, not tentative, but consuming, like he'd been holding back for weeks, and couldn't anymore. His hands threaded through my hair, tilting my head, and I melted into him with a sound that was half gasp, half surrender. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alessandro rested his forehead against mine. I've been in love with you since the first night, he confessed, watching you pour coffee with shaking hands and survive with grace. You were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I was a mess. You were perfect. He kissed me again, softer. And you're mine now, if you'll have me. Not as possession, as partner, as choice. I looked at this dangerous, tender man who dismantled every fear keeping me small. I choose you, I breathed. His smile was radiant and devastating. Then let me do this right. Alessandro stood, pulling me up with him, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. Come with me. There's something I need to show you. Now? It's almost midnight. Now. He grabbed his jacket, then paused. Unless you'd rather wait. I can be patient if... No. I surprised myself with the certainty. I don't want to wait. His smile was devastating. We drove through Brooklyn, in Alessandro's Mercedes, Marcus at the wheel, heading toward Manhattan. The city glittered around us alive despite the late hour. Alessandro held my hand the entire drive, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm that sent electricity up my arm. Where are we going? Somewhere I can do this properly. We pulled up to a building in Tribeca, sleek and modern. Alessandro led me to a private elevator that required a key, taking us to the top floor. When the doors opened, I gasped. A rooftop garden stretched before us, strings of lights wrapped around trees. Candles flickering in glass holders. The Manhattan skyline providing a backdrop so beautiful it hurt. A table set for two sat in the center, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. Alessandro, this is... I had it prepared 3 days ago, he admitted, hoping you'd eventually say yes to dinner up here. I've been waiting for the right moment. He guided me to the table where wine and roses waited. But he didn't sit. Instead, he stood before me, and something in his expression made my heart pound. 3 weeks ago, I walked into a diner because I couldn't sleep, Alessandro began, his voice steady but raw with emotion. I'd been going through motions for years, running the family business, making decisions, surviving but not living. And then I saw you. He took my hands in his. You were pouring coffee with hands that shook so badly I thought you'd drop the pot. But you smiled anyway. You were kind to people who didn't deserve it. You survived with grace despite exhaustion written in every line of your body. His grip tightened, and I couldn't look away. Alessandro let me finish. His smoke-grey eyes held mine with devastating intensity. I came back every night for 3 weeks, telling myself I was just making sure you were safe. But the truth is, I was falling in love with someone I'd never spoken to. With your strength. Your kindness. The way you refused to let the world make you bitter. He released my hands and my heart stuttered as he dropped to one knee. This is insane, Alessandro said with a slight smile. I know it's too fast. I know we've only known each other 3 weeks. I know every logical reason you should say no. From his pocket, he produced a velvet box, opening it to reveal a ring that caught the candlelight vintage. Platinum, with a center diamond surrounded by smaller stones that sparkled like captured stars. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. His voice cracked slightly. Marry me, Lily. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure your hands never shake from fear again. Let me give you partnership, safety, and every good thing you deserve. Let me love you the way you should have been loved all along. Time stopped. The city, the music, the candlelight, everything narrowed to just him. This powerful, dangerous man kneeling before me with absolute vulnerability in his eyes. I've been in love with you since I watched you pour coffee with shaking hands, Alessandro continued softly. Since you showed me that strength isn't about never breaking, it's about surviving and still choosing kindness. Say yes, Tesoro. Please say yes. My throat closed with emotion. 3 weeks. It had only been 3 weeks since he'd stepped between me and Jake. 3 weeks since he'd given me his card. Fixed my locks, bought Jake's debts, offered me an apartment with no strings. 3 weeks since he'd looked at me like I was something precious worth protecting. This is completely insane, I whispered. I know. We barely know each other. I know. His expression remained steady, patient, but hope flickered in his eyes. But I also know I'll spend every day earning your trust if you give me the chance. And if you say no, you keep everything. The apartment, the security, all of it. No consequences. No anger. Just my heart, broken but accepting. I looked at the ring at this man who'd seen me when I was invisible, who'd dismantled my fears with careful certainty, who was offering forever after 3 weeks of watching me survive. Every logical part of my brain screamed this was too fast, too dangerous, too much. But my heart, my broken, cautious heart that had learned not to trust, whispered something different. It whispered yes. I'm terrified, I admitted, tears spilling down my cheeks. I know, I'm terrified too. His hand came up, catching a tear with his thumb. But be terrified with me, Lily. Choose this, choose us. Choose the possibility that sometimes the best decisions are the ones that don't make sense. I looked at Alessandro Vitale, mafia boss. Dangerous man, unexpected savior, kneeling before me with my entire future in a velvet box. And I made the most insane, terrifying, perfect decision of my life. Yes. Alessandro's expression cracked open, devastating joy replacing the careful control he always maintained. Yes? His voice was barely a whisper, like he couldn't believe it. Yes. I was crying and laughing simultaneously. Yes, I'll marry you, you insane, wonderful man. He surged to his feet, lifting me off the ground and spinning me while I laughed against his shoulder. When he set me down, his hands framed my face with infinite gentleness. Say it again. Yes, Alessandro. I'll marry you. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and reverent all at once, like I was the answer to every question he'd never known to ask. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he slid the ring onto my finger where it fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably known my ring size since the second night of watching me. How did you... I pay attention. His smile was unapologetic. To everything about you. The way you take your coffee, how you tuck your hair behind your left ear when you're nervous. Your ring size from watching you twist that cheap silver band you used to wear. I looked at the ring, catching candlelight, then at him. When did you buy this? A week ago. He pulled me close, his arms secure around my waist. I knew I was going to ask. I was just waiting for you to be ready to say yes. Confident. Hopeful, he corrected. There's a difference. We swayed together under the string lights. The city sprawling below us, and I felt something settle in my chest. Like pieces that had been scattered were finally coming together. What happens now? I asked against his shoulder. Now we tell my family. Alessandro's tone was carefully neutral. They'll want to meet you properly. As my fiancé, my stomach tightened. Your family. The family that runs half of Brooklyn. The family that will love you because I do. He pulled back to meet my eyes. My Aunt Katerina has already been asking about you. So has my cousin Marco. They know you matter to me, which means you matter to them. And if they don't approve? His expression turned absolute. Then they'll learn to. You're mine, Lily. My choice. My future. Nothing changes that. We stayed on the rooftop until dawn painted the sky pink and gold, talking about everything and nothing. Alessandro told me about his family, the complicated dynamics, the expectations, the weight of legacy. I told him about my fears of not belonging in his world. You already belong, he insisted. You've belonged since the moment you said yes. When Marcus finally drove us back to Brooklyn, Alessandro walked me to my apartment door. Our apartment door, I corrected mentally. Everything was different now. I'll pick you up at 6 tonight, Alessandro said, brushing a kiss across my knuckles. Family dinner at my aunt's house. Nothing formal, just them meeting the woman I'm going to marry. That's not nerve-wracking at all. His smile was gentle. They'll love you. I promise. After he left, I collapsed on the couch, staring at the ring on my finger. Engaged. I was engaged to Alessandro Vitali after 3 weeks of knowing him. My phone rang. Rang's Rose's name flashing on the screen. Girl, you better get down to the diner right now. Her tone made my blood run cold. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly, but there's a woman here asking for you. So she's Alessandro's Aunt Katerina. Rosie's voice dropped. Lily, she brought half the Italian mothers in Brooklyn with her, and they all want to meet you before tonight's dinner. I looked at the ring, at the clock showing 8 a.m. At my reflection in the window, exhausted, overwhelmed, and apparently about to meet my future in-laws in a diner while wearing yesterday's clothes. I'll be right there. Wear that ring where they can see it, Rosie advised. These women take engagement seriously. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, my heart pounding. The rooftop proposal had been the easy part. Now came the real test, being accepted into a family that could destroy me as easily as protect me. But as I looked at the ring catching morning light, I remembered Alessandro's words. You already belong. I had to believe that was true. I walked into Rosie's diner at 8:30 a.m. to find it transformed. 6 Italian women occupied the center tables, pushed together to form one long surface covered in espresso cups, pastries, and animated conversation. They fell silent when I entered, every eye turning to assess me with the intensity of jewelers examining a diamond. The woman at the head of the table stood. She was elegant, probably in her 60s, with silver hair perfectly styled and eyes the same smoke grey as Alessandro's. She wore pearls and confidence like armor. Lily Martinez, not a question. Her accent was thick, musical. I am Caterina Vitali, Alessandro's aunt. She crossed to me, taking my left hand before I could offer it, examining the ring with shrewd approval. Ah, my mother's ring. He chose well. Your mother's Alessandro's grandmother. She would be pleased. Caterina pulled me toward the table with surprising strength. Come, sit. Meet the family who will become yours. The next hour was a whirlwind of names and faces. Rosa, Marco's mother. Gianna, Alessandro's cousin. Maria, Sophia, Elena, and cousins who asked questions faster than I could answer. Where was I from? How did we meet? Did I know what I was getting into, marrying a Vitali? He's a good boy, Caterina said firmly, silencing the others. But our world is not easy. You must be strong to survive it. I've survived worse, I said quietly. The table went silent. Caterina's eyes softened. Yes, Alessandro told me about your ex-boyfriend. About the fear. She squeezed my hand. That takes strength to survive, to keep going. My nephew sees this in you. It's why he loves you. It's only been 3 weeks, someone muttered Rosa, I think. Love doesn't watch clocks, Katerina said sharply. When you know, you know. My husband proposed after 2 weeks. We were married 43 years before God took him. She turned back to me. Do you love my Alessandro? Yes. No hesitation. More than makes sense. More than is logical. Good. Katerina's smile was approving. Logic has no place in love. Only certainty. She stood and the others followed like a choreographed dance. Tonight, you come to my house. We do this properly with family, with tradition. You understand? I nodded, overwhelmed. And Lily? Katerina paused at the door. Welcome to the family. You are one of us now. That means something. After they left in a parade of expensive cars, Rosie sat down beside me with fresh coffee. You survived the aunts. That's half the battle. What's the other half? Actually marrying into that family and living to tell about it. But she was smiling. They liked you, kid. I could tell. You didn't try to be anything but yourself. That evening, Alessandro picked me up wearing a dark suit and an expression that was equal parts amused and concerned. I heard about this morning, he said, kissing my forehead. I'm sorry, my aunt can be ... intense. She gave me her blessing. They all did. Relief flooded his features. I wasn't sure. They love you. I touched his face. Which means they're willing to love me too. For you. No. He caught my hand, pressing it against his chest where I could feel his heartbeat. They love you because you walked into a room full of Vitali women with no preparation and handled it with grace. That's not easy, Tesoro. We drove to Katerina's house in Bay Ridge, beautiful brownstone that smelled like garlic and fresh bread. Inside, the family had multiplied. At least 30 people filled the living room and dining room, all talking, laughing, existing in that comfortable chaos that only close families achieve. Alessandro kept me close to his side, introducing me to uncles and cousins and family friends. Everyone hugged me like I'd been part of them for years. Marco, Alessandro's cousin and second-in-command, pulled me aside at one point. I've known Alessandro since we were boys, he said quietly. I've never seen him like this. Happy. Really happy. You're good for him. Thank you for that. Before I could respond, Katerina called everyone to dinner. The table was enormous, covered in more food than I'd seen in months. Pasta, chicken, vegetables, bread, wine flowing freely. I sat beside Alessandro, his hand finding mine under the table while his family toasted us in Italian and English. To Alessandro and Lily, Katerina raised her glass. May their love be as strong as their courage. Salute! Salute! The room echoed. Alessandro leaned close. Still terrified? I looked around at these people who'd welcomed me without hesitation. At the life being offered, at the man beside me who'd seen me when I was invisible. Completely, I whispered. But I'm here anyway. His smile was everything. That's all I need. Outside, thunder rumbled, a storm rolling in off the Atlantic. But inside Katerina's house, surrounded by warmth and laughter and acceptance, I felt safe for the first time in years. I felt like I belonged. We married 2 weeks later. Not the big Italian wedding Katerina wanted. That would come later, she insisted. But a small ceremony at City Hall with just family, because Alessandro said he couldn't wait months to call me his wife. I wore a simple white dress that Katerina had altered from her own wedding gowns, silk that felt like water against my skin. Alessandro wore a navy suit that made his grey eyes luminous, and when he saw me walking toward him, his expression cracked open with such raw emotion that I nearly cried. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he whispered as I reached him. "You've said that before. I'll say it every day for the rest of our lives." The ceremony was brief. Traditional vows that felt anything but traditional. When Alessandro said them, his voice steady and absolute. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Alessandro kissed me like we were the only 2 people in the world. "Mine," he murmured against my lips. "Finally mine. Yours," I agreed. Always. The reception was at Katerina's house. The family insisted. More food, more wine, more laughter and dancing. Alessandro never left my side. his hand always finding mine, his eyes tracking me like he still couldn't believe I'd said yes. "Happy?" he asked as we danced under lights strung across Katerina's garden. "Terrified," I admitted, "but yes. So happy I don't know what to do with it. Get used to it." His arms tightened around me. "I plan to make you this happy every single day." Later, as the party continued inside, we stood in the garden alone. Alessandro pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. "I have something for you." He produced an envelope. "I know you gave up on finishing your degree when things fell apart with Jake, so I've arranged everything. Tuition paid, flexible schedule around whatever you want to do. You start next semester if you're ready." My throat closed. "Alessandro, you deserve to finish what you started. To chase dreams, not just survive." He cupped my face. "Let me give you that, tesoro. Let me help you become everything you were meant to be." I kissed him with everything I had, gratitude and love and wonder that this man existed, that he'd chosen me, that he saw potential I'd forgotten I possessed. "Thank you," I whispered, "for seeing me. For all of it, always." We left the reception around midnight, driving to Alessandro's penthouse in Manhattan, our home now. The space was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture mixed with antiques, rooms that felt lived in rather than staged. "Welcome home, Mrs. Vitale," Alessandro said as he carried me over the threshold despite my laughing protests. He set me down in the bedroom, decorated in soft greys and creams, a massive bed dominating the space. Candles flickered on surfaces, rose petals scattered across silk sheets. "When did you—" "I had hope," he interrupted softly, approaching slowly, giving me space to retreat if I needed, "that tonight would end here, with you, as my wife." My heart raced. "I'm nervous." "I know." He touched my face with infinite gentleness. "We go at your pace, whatever you want, whenever you're ready. There's no rush, tesoro, we have forever, but I didn't want to wait. Didn't want fear to steal this moment." "I'm ready," I whispered. "Show me what it's like to be loved properly." Alessandro's smile was devastating and tender. "It would be my honor." He kissed me slowly, reverently, like I was something precious he'd been entrusted to protect. And as the city glittered beyond the windows, as he whispered promises in Italian against my skin, I understood what it meant to be truly seen. To be cherished, not controlled. To be loved, not possessed. To be home. I woke to sunlight, and Alessandro's arms around me, his heartbeat steady against my back. "Good morning, wife," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. "Good morning, husband." The words felt surreal. 3 weeks ago I'd been invisible, surviving on shaking hands and fear. Now I was Lily Vitale, married to a man who'd somehow seen past exhaustion to the person I'd forgotten I could be. "What are you thinking?" Alessandro asked. "That this doesn't feel real." He turned me in his arms, smoke-gray eyes, serious. "It's real! You're mine, I'm yours, and nothing will ever change that." His hand found mine, wedding band glinting. "You're not alone anymore, Lily. You never will be again." I believed him. For the first time in years, I believed in safety that didn't come with conditions. In love that didn't demand I make myself small. In partnership that elevated instead of diminished. "I love you," I said simply. "I know." His smile was everything. "I've known since you poured coffee with shaking hands and survived with grace. I just had to wait for you to see it too." Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside our penthouse, wrapped in Alessandro's arms, I felt something fundamental shift. My hands weren't shaking anymore, and I was ready to start living instead of just surviving. 6 months into marriage, I stood in front of a classroom for the first time. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Mrs. Vitale, and I'll be a student teacher for American literature this semester." 25 high school students stared back at me with varying degrees of interest. My hands steady, confident, held the attendance sheet without trembling. The girl I'd been a year ago, pouring coffee with shaking fingers, felt like a stranger. After class, I checked my phone. A text from Alessandro. "How did it go, Professor Vitali?" "Don't call me that yet. I'm still student teaching. You're brilliant." "They're lucky to have you." His faith in me had never wavered, not when I'd nervously enrolled in classes, not when I'd doubted myself, not when balancing school and work and being married to a man whose world operated in shadows felt impossible. He'd simply said, "You can do anything, Tesoro." I've always known that. That evening, I found Alessandro in his study, reviewing documents with Marco. When I entered, both men stood, a sign of respect. Alessandro had insisted his entire organization show me. "Give us a moment," Alessandro told his cousin. Marco nodded, squeezing my shoulder as he passed. "Good to see you, Lily." After he left, Alessandro pulled me into his arms. "Tell me about your day." I did about the nervous excitement, the students who actually listened. The moment I'd realized I was exactly where I belonged. He listened with complete attention, asking questions, celebrating small victories like they were enormous. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "Not because you're doing what I wanted, but because you're chasing what you want. That's everything. You made it possible." "No." His expression turned serious. "You made it possible by surviving long enough for someone to see you. I just removed obstacles." "The strength was always yours, Lily." My phone buzzed. An email from an address I didn't recognize. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. Jake's name in the signature. Alessandro felt me tense. "What is it?" I showed him the email. It was brief. "Emma, I heard you got married. I'm happy for you. I'm in Alaska now, working on a boat. Sober for 6 months. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. I'm sorry for everything. Jake, a year ago, this would have sent me spiraling. Now I just felt nothing. No fear, no anger, just indifference." "He can't hurt me anymore," I said quietly. "He's just a person I used to know." Alessandro's smile was proud. "No, you're free of him." Finally, I deleted the email without responding. Jake was the past. This life, this beautiful, complicated, unexpected life was my present. Later that night, we stood on our penthouse balcony overlooking Manhattan. The city sparkled below us, alive with possibility. Alessandro wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That 10 months ago, I was invisible, surviving on coffee fumes and fear. And now, I gestured at the city, at our life, at the ring catching starlight. Now I have everything I never knew I could want. You were never invisible to me." His voice was soft. "From the moment I saw you pour coffee with shaking hands, I couldn't look away." I turned in his arms. "You fell in love with someone who was falling apart. I fell in love with someone who was surviving with grace," he corrected, touching my face. "There's a difference. You were never broken, Tesoro. You were just waiting for someone to see you clearly. And you did. I did." His smile was everything. "Best decision I ever made walking into that diner at 2 a.m. Finding you. Falling completely in love before I ever heard your voice. I rose on my toes to kiss him, this dangerous, devoted man who'd given me safety without cages, love without conditions, partnership without diminishment. "My hands don't shake anymore," I whispered against his lips. "I know." His arms tightened around me. "But even if they did, I'd still be here, holding them steady. Holding you. Always." We stood there as the city hummed below, wrapped in each other and the life we'd built from chance and coffee and 3 weeks that had changed everything. "Thank you," I said softly, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for loving me when I'd forgotten how to be loved, for giving me space to become who I was always meant to be. Thank you," Alessandro countered, "for saying yes when every logical part of your brain said no, for trusting me with your heart, for making me remember what it's like to live instead of just survive." Later, curled together in bed with city lights painting our ceiling in gold, I thought about the journey from invisible waitress to seen, loved, empowered woman. It had taken 3 weeks, and a mafia boss who'd fallen in love with shaking hands. What are you smiling about? Alessandro murmured, half asleep. Just thinking that you were right, I whispered. About what? When you proposed. You said time becomes irrelevant when you recognize someone as yours. I laced our fingers together, wedding bands touching. You knew in 3 weeks what took me longer to admit. But I'm here now, completely. Forever, he corrected sleepily, pulling me closer. You're here forever, Mrs. Vitali. I don't let go of what's mine, and for the first time in my life, belonging to someone felt like the most profound freedom imaginable. I was seen. I was loved. I was home, and my hands would never shake from fear again.